Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. You are watching the Zenith Glow Astrology YouTube channel. My name is Christina. I'm an astrologer and I am the creator of this channel and of Zenith Glow Astrology. Today, folks, we are going to do a little midpoint check-in. We are approaching the halfway point within this eclipse season that we are currently experiencing. And I wanted to check in because one, eclipses are intense. And especially this eclipse season is intense with Venus's retrograde and Mercury's retrograde and all those other things that I talked about in my previous eclipse video, which I will link for you at the end of this video if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet. As well, I also did a video on the Venus retrograde if you want to know more information about Venus's retrograde cycle. But this week, we also have some really intense, I hate using that word. I'm sorry, I use it too much. I need to dig through a thesaurus and find a better word. But we have some more intense energies coming on this week. So I wanted to check in because, we had the eclipse a few days ago, the lunar eclipse in Virgo, that brought a lot of release to us, a lot of epiphanies, just a lot of change and transformation starting to shift in our lives. I actually heard one of my good friends who is a writer on Substack, Eric. He writes a fantastic blog called Coincidence Speaks. I will put a link for that below if you want to check out his work. It is fantastic. He's a beautiful writer and an excellent musician, and just a beautiful soul in general. But he put out a post today talking about this acceleration we are experiencing in 2025 of beginnings and endings. And I can't agree with him more on that. I talked about this a little bit as well in one of my videos. I don't remember which one now. But it's so true. It's like we moved through a portal earlier this year and we are now accelerating in things that are falling away in our lives and things that are being rebirthed in our lives. So this is a really rapid process that we're all undergoing at this time. And I feel like we're handling it pretty well, like we wouldn't be going through these changes so quickly if we weren't ready to deal with them. But at the same time, it is a lot of change in a short window of time. Now, just know that this month of March and then also going into April, these are supposed to be the two most intense, fast-paced, frenetic, crazy months of this entire year. So just know we are kind of in the crux of it. We're in the climax of it right now. So we will be able to breathe a little bit easier as we move forward into the year ahead. We just have to kind of ride these waves and get through it. So okay, let's talk about what is happening specifically this week and why it is bringing in another peak of energy. So we had lunar eclipse in Virgo, right? And we got a peak of energy there. I'm sure y'all felt it. Now this week we have the vernal equinox, okay? And that's going to be on March 20th. This is when the sun moves into the zodiac sign of Aries and it starts Aries season, and this is also the astrological new year, okay, according to the tropical astrology. So that in and of itself is a portal window. It's a portal window of energy. We get this every year when we start the new astrological year. So with it comes its own energy signature, and it carries the energy of new beginnings. It carries kind of an excited forward momentum sort of energy. You get the sun in Aries, so it's illuminating this Aryan frequency of wanting to charge ahead, wanting to move forward into our destiny, feeling excited and wanting to push and just having like very active energy. So we have that in and of itself. Then we have the two eclipses, lunar eclipse in Virgo, followed next week by the solar eclipse in Aries, which I will be doing a video on in a few days, and we're going to go into depth on that. For right now, we're focusing on this week, one little bit at a time. So having this like portal window of new beginnings and the vernal equinox, which is the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, the autumnal equinox in the southern hemisphere. I have some friends in Australia and New Zealand. Hey guys. It still brings this kind of peak of energy, and it's intense to have it sandwiched between two intense transits in and of themselves. So again, that's partly why the month of March is so like really, really, really busy. But there's even more going on this week beyond the spring equinox. And this is what I really wanted to talk about. And oh my goodness, I'm already seeing this energy show up. I've been talking to friends of mine, to family members. I'm already seeing it show up. So I'm like, okay, yes, we definitely need to chat about this a little bit. So what is happening? We have the spring equinox or the autumnal equinox. The vernal equinox is on March 20th. Okay. And then 2-3 days later, between the 22nd and the 23rd, depending on your time zone, we have Venus coming into conjunction with the sun. Retrograde Venus coming into conjunction with the sun. 2 days after that, between the 24th and the 25th, depending on your time zone, we have retrograde Mercury coming into conjunction with the sun. Now let's talk about why that matters, why that is important. So when Venus and Mercury conjunct the sun at that point in their retrograde cycle, it marks a halfway point within that cycle. We call this the inferior solar conjunction, which you don't need to worry about, but if you're interested in learning astrology, we call it the inferior solar conjunction. This is the point where in Mars's retrograde cycle, when it reaches the halfway point, Mars is actually opposite of the sun. And all the other outer planets reach opposition with the sun at the halfway point in their retrograde cycle. Now, because Mercury and Venus are within Earth's orbit, they never oppose the sun from our perspective. And everything is from our perspective because we're observing this all from Earth, right? So what happens is they come into conjunction with the sun from our perspective, and that marks the halfway point of their retrograde cycle. Why does the halfway point of their retrograde cycle matter? Because it represents a climax, a culmination in energy within that entire cycle. It's like there is a story unfolding as each of these planets moves through that cycle. We get that introduction when we're in the pre-retrograde phase, and then we kind of enter into Act 1 as we're moving through the first part of the cycle. And then we get to the peak of energy within Act 2, which I guess I'm describing a play now, but you get the idea. It's that story format. We reach a climax of energy when those two planets conjunct the sun within their retrograde cycle. So, whoo, intense energy coming in at this time. And then once they move out of conjunction, the energy will kind of chill a little bit more. Not totally, but it's not going to be as intense. We start to wrap things up. We start to get conclusions. Okay. So having them conjunct the sun is important because it represents illumination. It represents enlightenment. It represents things literally coming to light within our consciousness and within our experience. So, and this is true of Venus and Mercury within their own little retrograde cycles that they go through. But at this time, they just happen to be pretty much conjunct with each other. They've been traveling together through the sign of Aries, through each of their retrograde cycles. And so they are experiencing these climactic conjunctions almost simultaneously, like within just a few days of each other. So we've got like spring equinox, Venus conjunct the sun, Mercury conjunct the sun. Bam, bam, bam. So this is, a series of heightened energy points that we are experiencing. And then keep in mind, people, especially folks who are more sensitive to energy, tend to experience these frequencies a couple of days or more before they actually become exact. Yeah, that's me. So just know that this is coming in. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what it means to have this illumination. Well, the whole retrograde cycle for either of these planets, the point of it is to go back over things, right? Like we're retrograding, we're moving backwards, we're reviewing things related to these planets, related to the signs that they are in, related to the houses that they transit through in our individual natal charts. And the whole point is to retrace our steps, because at some point in those planetary cycles, those planets moved beyond the boundaries of consciousness. It's sort of like just having a lot of inertia. And you're like, yeah, I know how I'm going to do things. And you start bounding forward and you're going and you're going and you're going and you're going. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then you slow down and then you go backwards. It's like, hold on, let's go look at our steps. Wait a minute, did that work for me? I'm noticing that I'm not really happy. I'm noticing I'm experiencing frustration. I'm noticing that I'm experiencing stagnation, restless energy, a lack of fulfillment in my life. Whatever it is, that's the whole point to these retrograde cycles. Then you go back over, retrace your steps so that you can integrate all of those unconsciously taken steps into your consciousness and then decide, do I want to keep these behaviors? Do I want to keep these mindsets? Do I want to keep these values? Or do I need to rework things? Do I need to revisit things from my deep past, like from the distant past, to see, was there something back there that maybe I missed or maybe I disregarded and now it is relevant to me and I want to carry that forward? You know, there's all kinds of ways that this can show up, but that's the whole retrograde process. That's the point of it. So when these planets come into this inferior solar conjunction, uh, it's like we've been working with these things, these themes of retracing our steps and going back over things, but we've almost been doing it in like a more subtle way, like almost unconsciously, or we're just kind of taking little bits and pieces of it. And like, yeah, I don't like that. Yeah, I think I want to change that. I don't know about that. You know, and when it comes into the conjunction with the sun, there's this peak of illumination, and suddenly it's like, oh, I get it now. And then we get really excited. So there's this very excited kind of energy behind the conjunction with the sun. There's like a determination to take those aha moments, those epiphanies that we experience within the realm of human behavior and whatever the planet rules and whatever sign it's in and blah, blah, blah. We take all of that and we want to put it into practice. Okay. So there's this strong urge to take action, and there's a strong urge to move forward with the new information. Sun, light is information, the sun is information, uh, in order to cultivate whatever it is that we feel like is missing or is out of place, all the things that we've come to realize through the retrograde cycle. So basically, it's kind of like the early stage of the retrograde cycle, you're sort of like researching and studying. And then you get to the point of the conjunction with the sun, and suddenly you want to put it to practical use. And you're wanting to implement the things that you have come to conclusions about, the things that you've learned. However, because these planets are still retrograde, there's like a lack of objectivity, particularly with Venus and Mercury, because they're such personal planets. They're so close to our conscious experience. Whereas planets like Mars and then all the outer planets have a little bit more, we could say, social objectivity, which is symbolized by the fact that those planets actually make an opposition to the sun during the halfway point of their retrograde cycle versus a conjunction with the sun. So they're literally like opposite, and then Venus and Mercury are overlapped. So those planets get a little bit more objectivity and they have a better sense of what it means to implement these new insights. Venus and Mercury are a little bit more naive. They're a little bit less objective about it. It's so deeply personal. So sometimes we can kind of jump into action before we're really ready for it. That's one of the things that can result from this energy. Now, mind you, like a few days after the conjunction and they start to move away from the sun, it's going to become, sorry, there's like a little gnat flying around me. Uh, it's going to become more and more objective, more increasingly uh, understandable in a way that we can implement that's going to be more harmonious and more in sync with what we really want to manifest and create in our lives. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but I guess the point to it is that this energy coupled with the spring equinox or the vernal equinox, so this applies even if you're living in the southern hemisphere, um, it creates this feeling of, wow, I want to spring into action. Oh my gosh, I just realized something. I feel very passionate about what I just realized, and I need to go do this now. And I got to put it into action. But because we're still retrograde, you might encounter some missteps in that practical application. And it's okay. The missteps are all part of the retrograde process because, again, the whole retrograde process is to go over things and see what's working, what's not. So, whatever happens during this period, just know ultimately it's going to serve you later on when these planets turn direct. And once again, Mercury turns direct on April 6th and Venus turns direct on April 13th. Okay, so we're getting there. We're halfway through, guys. Woo! But we also have the solar eclipse in Aries next week. So it's almost like there is this very strong magnetic pull of energy that's drawing us forward and we're wanting to really like propel forward. We're like tired of this retrograde energy where we're just everything, there's delays, and I'm feeling like so stagnant, and I'm feeling so restless, and I'm feeling just blah, or whatever it is that you're feeling. We're so ready to get out of that now. We're so ready, like, yeah, I got it. I want to go forward. I'm ready to go forward. But we're not actually ready to go forward yet because there's still some lessons that we're learning. There's still some insights that we have to integrate into our consciousness before we really, really can synthesize all of that information, all of that evolution of consciousness, which is ultimately what we're going through. And just as a reminder, Venus is about our relationships. It's about our relationship to ourself, first and foremost, and our sense of self-worth and the values that align with that. And then that gets extended out into our relationships, right? Because our sense of self-worth and how we view ourselves is mirrored through the types of relationships that we have and the types of people that we attract into our lives. So these are things that we are reviewing right now, right? Like, do my relationships align with me? Am I being treated the way I want to be treated in my relationships? Am I valuing myself? All those things. And again, I've already talked about all this. You can go into more detail on that if you look at my previous videos. But and then Mercury, typical Mercury retrograde, it goes retrograde 3 times a year. So, and we actually, if you include the shadow periods, we actually spend about half of our lives in Mercury retrograde energy. So this is very familiar to us, even though people are always like shaking their fist at the sky and cursing the gods every time Mercury is retrograde. Just know though, like if you're having vehicle problems, if you're having technical malfunctions, if you're having miscommunication, all those typical Mercury retrograde uh, antics that come up, know that whenever those things happen, it's the universe telling you, hey, stop, slow down, reevaluate, tune into your surroundings, tune into yourself before you push forward. That's the reason why those things happen, okay? As long as you do that, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So, let's see, what else was I going to talk about? Oh, yeah. Another interesting thing that I came to realize. So, if you subscribe to me on Substack, you may have read my past retrograde planet articles. Okay, I've done like a series on retrograde planets, kind of teaching all about them. I go into great detail on that actually. And so maybe I will try to link that for y'all underneath in the description if you're interested in checking that out. Everything is free on there, by the way, guys. Like, and you don't have to subscribe to me to read, although I do appreciate it if you do. But I came to my own epiphany when I was researching retrogrades and writing about them. And the epiphany that I had was kind of combining these two different schools of astrological thought. And what that was is, okay, so we learned that through retrograde cycles, when Venus and Mercury come into their inferior solar conjunction with the sun, represents a climax of energy, right? So that's an important time, like it's a very specific, important time in the retrograde cycle. But then I started thinking about Sabian symbols. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Sabian symbols. They're kind of their own thing, and there's some astrologers that are like, I don't like them. I don't like Sabian symbols. They don't look at them at all. And then there's some astrologers that always look at them. I'm kind of like in between. I don't usually look at them unless I feel an intuitive kind of hit to check them out. But they can be very interesting, and they're essentially channeled images that symbolize every single degree of the zodiac. So there's 360 degrees in the entire zodiac circle, right? Because a circle is 360 degrees. So every single sign has 30 degrees, and the Sabian symbols have a different symbolic image that represents the archetype or the energy for every single degree within every single sign in the zodiac. It's really interesting if you ever want to dive into that. But what this means is that what I came to the conclusion of when I was doing my research on this and really nerding out on the astrology, what I came to the conclusion of is that if this point when a planet comes into, let's say, Mercury and Venus, when they're at the halfway point in their retrograde cycle and they come into conjunction with the sun, the degree at which they conjunct the sun must be important. It must hold some kind of symbolic information, which we could see if we look at what the Sabian symbol for that particular degree is. So, to that end, and I hope that all makes sense, and if it doesn't, you can just disregard what I'm saying. So to that end, I looked up the Sabian symbols for Mercury's for Mercury's conjunction with the sun coming up this week. And then I looked up Venus's as well. So Venus is going to be conjunct the sun at about 2 degrees of Aries, and it's going to be between 2 and 3 degrees of Aries, right? So when you're looking up Sabian symbols, you always defer to the higher degree, meaning if you have a planet that's between 2 and 3 degrees, you would look up degree number 3. Does that make sense? So for Venus, I'm going to pull this up on my computer here. So 3 degrees of Aries, this is the Sabian symbol that represents that particular degree. A cameo profile of a man in the outline of his country. Now, I also want to mention that I'm getting this information from James Burgess's website. He is a fantastic astrologer, and he's done just a ton of research on Sabian symbols, and I think that his work is top-notch. Anyway, so a cameo profile of a man in the outline of his country. Let's read what that describes. The awesome power of life itself as we identify the most spiritual dimensions of being, seeing oneself in the context of being with others. Ooh, thinking about that Venus energy. Let me just read this little paragraph, if I can read it. My God, Mercury retrograde. The sense of being part of the whole brings meaning and allows higher powers to act through us. It extends beyond our local community and embraces universal realities. We are part of it all, and this knowledge gives us both security and power. We can even touch the level of archetype and so awaken to that higher degree. So, thinking about Venus being retrograde, and then the point of her illumination, the epiphany that she has as she comes into conjunction with the sun during her retrograde cycle. If you pull this context into it, it really is quite interesting. So again, the awesome power of life itself is we identify the most spiritual dimensions of being, seeing oneself in the context of being with others. And we're talking about Aries, right? So it's like we are pulling in greater spiritual awareness of ourselves as we look at our relationship context with others. And it gives us this beautiful, profound shift in perception, doesn't it? Because Aries is all about the self, right? And we've been doing this work with Venus in Aries. We've been really diving deep into what are my values? What do I need to feel good in myself? How do I stand up for myself? How do I charge forward in my life in ways that bring harmony and peace to me? And we've been reevaluating our relationships, and we've been tweaking those relationships so that they can align better with what we are coming to realize about Venus stuff, right? So it's just interesting because it's like we are really starting to channel universal energy through ourselves. And I really think, again, going back to my beautiful friend Eric's post that he made this morning. What's up, Eric? I didn't tell him that I was going to reference his work. I hope he doesn't mind. Um, yeah, this acceleration of endings and beginnings, it's happening because we are ready for it. Acceleration of endings and beginnings. You have to be in oh my gosh, Mercury. You have to be in a certain stage of consciousness to be able to handle change like that. And we all evolve at different rates, but for those of us that are living this spiritually conscious existence, for those of us that have gone through this portal into this new timeline and we're awakening to new adventures and new challenges and new opportunities in our lives, what we are really doing is we are opening ourselves, our identity, our being, our ego, our consciousness to something greater than ourselves. There is like this divine frequency that we are channeling, and we are starting to implement it in our lives. And the beautiful thing about that, I'm sorry, I'm getting really excited, guys. The beautiful thing about that is these two worlds, the self within the earth and the 3D, and the higher self within the higher realms of existence, and the divine creative impulse. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. And in fact, when they come together, there is this beautiful sense of harmony. There is this sense of, wow, the things that I really, really want for myself and that I've just been yearning for and craving are actually the same things that the divine wants for me as well. And the divine wants it for me because the divine wants me to be happy, but the divine also wants it for me because it is serving the divine for me to act out these archetypes, for me to live out these yearnings and to align with my heart. It's so beautiful. And I think that this is like the energy of this particular degree of Aries, this Sabian symbol. So this is something that is actually coming into our consciousness this week. This new beginning is starting to emerge for us. We're starting to grasp this new insight, and it's taking us into a more profound understanding of ourselves and ourselves in the context of our relationships. What do our relationships really mean for us? And how are they actually impacting this beautiful cosmic trajectory that we are acting out on behalf of this divine, loving, creative force of the universe? So, Mercury is also doing this, right? So Mercury will be conjunct the sun approximately 4 degrees, but it's going to be between 4 and 5 degrees. So again, when you look up a Sabian symbol, you want to defer to the higher degree. So Mercury's process and its epiphany is tied into this symbol. The Sabian symbol is a triangle with wings. And here's how it's described: reaching up towards a new dimension of being, finding the skills, loyalties, and values to rise to higher levels of consciousness. And then I'll read the little paragraph. Having awareness of the essential mystery of life, that we are facets of universal consciousness, unity experiencing duality. We find a zealous appetite and innocent longing to know unity again. So we develop a taste for a transcendent state of being. We see that our complete life journey will be directed so that eventually we can go back to where we came from and then reside in such an elevated state. I mean, that is like so on par with what I just said about Venus, except this is more of the mental plane of it. It's actually like a synthesis of head and heart going on right now, because Venus is our heart, right? She is our longing. She is the way that we love and the way we want to be loved. And Mercury is our perception, it's our consciousness, it's our logical, rational, conscious mind. So both of these aspects, these dimensions of our being, are receiving this beautiful kiss of light from the sun right now that's bringing in this illumination. And the illumination has to do with cultivating this higher awareness of how we are connected to the universal unity of creation, and how we are actually like living in this dualistic reality that's really just an illusion, right? All the duality is just an illusion because everything is one all the time. I'm sorry, I know I'm getting like super hippy trippy dippy right now, but I just think that it's a beautiful thing, because no matter what kinds of challenges we're experiencing in our lives right now, no matter what kinds of endings and beginnings are accelerating and rapidly manifesting in our creation, um, we are cultivating a greater contextual awareness for that. Like, this is all part. Hi, this is my dog, Eva. Hi, Eva. We are developing a greater context for all of that, right? It's like when we experience relationship problems, or or when our car breaks down, or when our computer crashes, or whatever you might experience through these types of retrograde energies, um, it puts it into a greater context, right? Like, it's not as, it's still sad to experience endings. Like, we still feel our human emotions, but there's suddenly a deeper meaning behind it all. We can suddenly make connections to how everything is interconnected. We can suddenly see the web of creation and how we are a part of it. And it somehow softens that blow a little bit more, right? And then again, woven through these eclipses and through the spring equinox or vernal equinox and through everything going on right now, we've also got this Neptune sitting at the 29th degree of Pisces conjunct the North Node. So we also have the confrontation with our spiritual destiny that is going on right now. And that's being opposite of the South Node. So we're also integrating stuff from our past and figuring out, what is helping us as we move forward and what do we need to leave behind. But I really think that everything that is going on right now is birthing this beautiful new spiritual destiny. And for every single one of us, that looks completely different. It is completely tailored to you and your story and what your heart longs for, what your heart wants to create in your life. And honestly, this energy is very strong for manifestation. And I want to tell you that with Venus retrograde, you might be experiencing delays in your manifestations, and that's very normal. And actually, with Mercury retrograde too, because Mercury takes the mind and it brings it into fruition, into the tangible realm of reality, right? That's kind of the progression between Gemini and Virgo, those archetypes, which Mercury rules. So, just know that this entire period that we're going through right now is a fantastic time to be thinking about what you want to create in your life and what you want to see manifest. Because when these planets go direct next month, the energy is going to shift. Suddenly, the tide is not coming in, it's going out. So just know, and also the eclipses, right? And the eclipses can take up to 6 months to fully unfold, to see what changes and transformation they brought in, what faded events they are bringing to each of us. But just know that whatever you're creating, whatever you're processing, whatever you're thinking about during this time is something that is likely to be manifested for you later once these energies shift. And that, my friends, is a really beautiful, powerful thing. So, okay, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. This video is a little bit shorter today. Ooh, what a miracle, right? So I hope that you all have a good week. I hope you enjoy these energies. I hope you ride the waves. Know that with the Aries archetype of energy, we can have more confrontations during this time. So just breathe through it and know that other people are dealing with this stuff too. Other people may not be as conscious of what's going on. They may not do as much self-reflection. And so folks like that tend to project outward. They tend to emotionally react more. So let's just have, patience and love for everyone. And just know, like you are evolving. You are on a journey. You are being aligned with what is meant for you. And it is the calling of your heart, and it is the beautiful writing of your soul, and it is starting to unfold, folks. This is exciting. We're getting into it now. So I hope you have a beautiful week. Get ready for the eclipse next week. I will be posting a video on that. If you guys have any questions, you can always email me at zenithglowastrology@gmail.com. I'm completely serious about that. Send me an email if you have a question. I love talking about astrology. I don't mind receiving emails. Do it. You can find me on Substack, and then I'm going to post a link to my website below. And then, of course, I also do astrology readings. So if you guys ever want to explore this stuff more in depth in your chart for you personally and how it shows up for you personally, I would be happy to do that. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you all, and I will catch you next time. Bye.